off your suit.
Hello, beautiful people. I am Oliver Perrin, and welcome to A Safer Space. I think that this will be posting to A Safer Space because I think the last one that I will have posted will have come from Semiogogue, which is a good point for me to announce that I will now be posting in an alternating way to both channels. So you're not going to see announcements on Semiogogue about how content has been posted to A Safer Space. You're simply going to have to go to one or the other of the channels. So if you're not subscribed to both with the little bell checked for notifications, then you will not hear about these things appearing. You'll have to go and check on your own. You can follow Semiogogue and A Safer Space on BitChute. And as always, there is Twitter, Minds, Gab, and Patreon for my kind patrons. I am speaking today, ladies and gentlemen, with the upright Mr. Donovan Warland from far away. Hola, sir.
Here in Eugene, trying to keep it together.
Yeah, I imagine that that's challenging at times. And this might be the perfect opportunity for you to get all kinds of things out of your system.
I know.
Because as we have discussed this evening, we'll have a kind of BitChFEST, kind of, what pisses me off episode. This is a Sunday night thing, so to our viewers, I would not expect too much in the way of really precise, reasoned Aristotelian argument, plodding forward with syllogisms. I think this is going to be more along the lines of, God damn it, it really pisses me off when type stuff. So we're just going to talk some shit and enjoy ourselves. Before we get started, Donovan, can you tell everybody really quickly how to follow you, on your channel, on Twitter, whatever you might want to mention to folks so they can connect?
All right, DONOVANWORLAND, Donovan Warland on generally on Google, like Google Plus on YouTube, you could find me. But as far as say Minds and Gab, I usually am under Turcopolier. TURCOPOLIER. And and I don't post as often as I should on there, but I'm going. That's a project actually that I'm working on. So.
And isn't it? Do you have something I seem to remember as @Don_Arete?
Oh yes, and on Twitter, DON_ARETE is how you'll end up finding me on there.
Right on. Well, everybody, check out Donovan's stuff. He's got all kinds of great content he posts on YouTube as well. So I guess I will start this off. We can maybe trade back and forth or see what spontaneously arises for things that really fucking piss me off. The first one, I've made myself a little list here. I actually made the ink by mixing together the ashes of a black eggshell that I bought, a black egg without haggling, and then burned it. And then I mixed in my tears that I wept in learning about these things, and the blood that I sweated from my body in my rage. And here at the top of my list are TSA checks. For those of you who do any kind of flying, the whole act of fucking ritual submission. It's like when you see in TV shows how the guy always gets thrown down on the hood of the car with the cop standing over him and handcuffs his hands behind his back. Exactly. It's just like being at the proctologist. I'm like, does our culture have to show us more horrifying more horrifying examples of animal behavior that has become ritualized? So in addition to being bent over and having your hands restrained by large men behind you, we have the ritual submission of having to remove our shoes and our belts. Like I remember there's a term in Mongolian for women. They refer to them as beltless because there's something about the man wearing the belt. It goes back to the traditions of like the boxer's belt, the wrestler's belt, the rituals of cincture, kingship. So a woman is beltless. And yet we have to remove our shoes and slide with our socked feet across these ridiculous floors, take our belts off, and then hold our arms up so boxes can scan us and, Yeah, and then we get fondled by these TSA people who can scarcely fucking avoid having drool, dribble out of their mouths. They're such fucking idiots. And think about this, think about the fact that if I want to fly somewhere, that's what I get put through if I'm at the goddamn airport, and I hope I'm getting this good bitching vibe going. And then think about people coming across the fucking border. They're just strolling in and being housed and stuff, and yet I'm forced to like ritually abase myself to like fly somewhere. What the fuck?
So here's something that maybe have you yet done El Al?
Done what?
The airline El Al, Israeli.
Oh,
airline.
no, I haven't been on it. I haven't.
Okay, yeah, they've got this down to a science. We've known what to do.
Oh yeah, you're talking about like Israeli internal security, like when you land and stuff, and how they check you. Yeah, they're actually doing something besides ritually abusing you.
Every type of security measure, and once you are, and they make you aware of it. One, they say we are very concerned about security at all times. So there will be various measures that might not make sense to you at first, but you're going to have to just go along with this. So that's the first thing. They tell you the condition of dealing with being on our airline is blah, 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 blah. So at least you get that from the very beginning. So then they get in touch with you when you and your whole plane are going to get on the plane. They tell you when to arrive at El Al, and then when you arrive, you don't see anyone. It's you and all the people are going to be on your plane, not some random planes, the Indonesian Airlines, where you're not like walking through. I always love this because this is the thing that really, when I saw the whole TSA thing, started hearing about this, and I flew one time while it existed, and I was still a hippie dip, so of course it's a whole mess. The way that went. It wasn't terrible, but it was stupid. But the thing that hit me is I was like, this line of people is now sitting here with totally random other people walking around. This is not really a secure zone. Like, it doesn't really look like there's something keeping anyone from this.
No, anyone who comes in and like actually pays attention to how you would have to secure a process just looks at it and is like, get fucked. Just get fucked. Just get out of my fucking face, man. Yeah, or like when they come in and they swab down my shit and I have to sit there while they put the little fucking piece of, cloth over it or paper and wipe this down and put it in and look at me. Like I'm going to have like one big fucking pear-sized droplet of sweat that's going to sprout from my forehead in terror, as they catch me. Whatever. Okay, so your turn. What do you have for your return? Your example in return of a thing that you fucking hate.
Honestly, I think the entire fad, that it started as a fad of vegetarianism and veganism. Then it became a bit of a recommendation that people should up their fresh vegetables and fruit thing. And now it is the weirdest, like seaweed tea, some disgusting seaweed tea in like some kind of nut milk. And now, because if you actually look at the boxes of these brands, we're using so many of these almonds and hazelnuts, they're now cutting all of these non-dairy milk products with rice milk. And it's just more and more hilarious to see this industry. Like, it's like, okay, the problem that you all have is a cow eats so much grass, and it gets so big, feeds so many people. It is extremely difficult to grow hazelnuts and almonds. Extremely expensive. You have to know you're going to make your money back. You have to. And I'm like, don't you all realize like what it takes to keep you vegans and vegetarians going in that sense? In
terms of the what you give versus what you get in terms of calories and energy through the process?
Exactly. And then there's the next part of it that started to hit me is I'm like, this is entirely almost a fad that outside of like almost every woman goes through this. Like yeah, it's just this thing that I like. I'm like, what are you all not getting about fat and protein? And then I'm like, no, we simply are not teaching science. Like that's all this is. And I'm like, you look at the land of Buddhism and McDonald's are popping up everywhere. They will eat any animal they can get a hold of. You can go to their markets and you can find it cooked on a spit. And it's like, what are you all not getting about the real world and what real humans really eat? And because their citations are sort of these utopian.
Oh yeah, how it should be. It's always how it should be, but that's always, quite a leap across the chasm, from how it is,
And yes, and then on top of it, I'm like, at some point they will give a example with Gandhi or maybe the Buddha or something like that, and I'm like, you do know the Dalai Lama is not a vegetarian. Like, he actually was raised eating meat. Well, no. I'm like, okay, well, that aside, and then I'll go into how it was odd. And it's always the challenge. Like, you could find hundreds of years of Buddhists writing about how hard it is to not eat meat. That they would eat meat if they could.
Right, and they're totally after. I mean, you got like Nogai Chai, and in Central Asia they have it, and they have it in Tibet too, where they basically mix butter with their tea.
Yeah.
So they got large amounts of butter, so it's fat and energy with the stimulant of the tea. I know in some variations they do things like drop barley into it and stuff as well. It's crazy. I once had one of these old bowls from Central Asia that goes on in a saddle case made of leather with wire embroidery, and you peel it open and it's got these particular type of trade bowls from China. So all the horsemen would have these little bowl carriers on their horses, and that's what they mixed their tea in. But they also had, the fat together with the tea, and also drinking tons of vodka. I mean, most of these people don't know about what the folks in these strange cultures that they idolize, really do. All of them, really, they just need to take up Jainism, where they're like sweeping the ground carefully with like a broom to make sure there are no insects before they sit down that they might crush. It's like, past a certain point, fuck that shit. Okay, so to stay on the bitching run, you just brought something up with vegans and vegetarians that totally works for me, which is women with specialized diets. I get when you're like, everybody should eat what they want, right? And there are certain challenges to dealing with a woman and her making her choices about where she wants to eat, where you have to be like, you've got to help you if you're around a woman who's fucking hungry anyway, because some shit that's already, kind of dodgy in how it's wired just fucking short circuits completely. And they're like, oh, I'm fucking hungry, and you can see them. The menstruum arises bloody in their eyes, and this glow begins to appear around their face. They're going to destroy it.
Like eating then, hun.
And then you have to tell them the places, do you want to go to such and such or so-and-so? And they're like, I don't know. And you're like, well, okay. Finally, the best thing that you do is, well, I don't want to do this. Why don't you decide? I just want you to decide. And then you're like, you decide. And they're like, well, I don't like that one. So I find it's the best thing to do is just make the decision, and then they'll show you by the fact that they don't like your final decision which place you want to go. A little handy bit of worldly wisdom for you younger men who are trying to sort out the labyrinthine depths of women's psychology. But back to the strange diets. Right? Like, I get it. If you don't want to eat a bunch of bread, I get it. Right? I'm not a real big believer in this, gluten-free crap, but whatever. However, I have noticed, maybe it's my age range too, I just know tons of women who are now super focused on what they can and can't eat, and whether or not it's allowed. And I have to wonder myself, is it something that really is just now about it as a part of a trend, or does it go back to something older that's just there with females in general, that they're gonna have a focus on that? It's kind of like they're focused on cosmetics and scents, perfumes and foodstuffs and drugs and unguents. And
I have wondered the same thing. I have wondered if we maybe are not seeing clearly an environmental as something evolutionary indicating something about the environment, and we're just not seeing it, because it's a novel time, and it was some novel set of conditions. And it's like, no, they're not finicky eaters. They're allergic to air, or something, It's like,
right, but no, they have an aspect where I'll trust a woman's snout. I'll trust them to like sniff something out that's the right way to go or the wrong way to go.
Totally.
It's kind of like there have been studies done, and it changes. There are a certain number of men who are just as receptive to sensitive to changes in color wavelengths. But in general, women tend to be more receptive to noticing and distinguishing degrees of color.
Yes.
Along a continuum that might otherwise seem much more blunt to males. And I think that there's some truth that and again, it's not always the case. When you bring consciousness to it, I think that there are plenty of men who know how to do this as well. But women have a sensitivity. That's why they don't want to eat the meat now. They know, as long as we're bitching, that we, the tribes of the people who drink milk, right? The tribes of the people who fucking raise the herds, now are very women, the ones who made the deal with the animals once back in the dimmest dawn of prehistory, the ones who fucking decided not to crack the little puppy it found over the head with a rock and said, no, I'll fucking raise it. And they tamed it. They fucking made of it theirs through all their weird womanly shit. Mm-hmm. These are the ones who now place their noses to the meat that's put before them. And they're like, mm-mm, mm-mm.
Totally.
They know that we broke our deal with the fucking mighty herd, man. We started feeding our livestock the ground up bloody paste of their own kind. So yeah, why wouldn't they know it? But okay, so that's me bitching. We got to keep this rolling, and we can go to different facets. Something else that really fucking pisses you off. The first example you gave seems very much like straight out of like the West Coast, because you're all like, don't they understand that this doesn't really knit together with Buddhism properly, right? But perhaps you have some other thing to bitch about.
Oh, now there is the weirdest fetishization of simpleton music. It's this weird thing of there was a bit of fun with late 90s rock. Ooh, I look just like Buddy Holly. Like, that was they were being creative. They were fun. It was the triumph of the nerd. You and I remember
right.
this.
That's when They Might Be Giants momentarily were, liked by a large number of people. Yeah. It's kind of like we're celebrating our emasculation. It's fun.
And there was there was also this thing of like where, you would be sitting around with some, Americans, and you'd be sitting there going, a lot of this rock and roll it's not really that great. So you turn to like the oldies station, or like some guy who, KRQR or something, where they were playing like 70s rock, and then it was like, yeah, these guys really were a bit more fun. There's more fun, and everybody's drinking and having a good time. And that was something about the 90s I remember clearly. So all these young people now are playing all this 90s rock like this was the fucking genius, and aughts rock that's even weirder, that's just plain weird, salmon pants rock, and like stuff that was just so pop, and then like the genius of Will Smith, and I'm like, Will Smith was like, yes, a good showman, but he's the epitome of a pop act.
Yeah, he totally was. I remember that. That was a really striking thing when you were talking to people who were into rap and stuff at the time. Like, he was kind of like Disney rap. Like, it was totally accessible. It was rated PG at most. So, yeah.
And that was the thing is, I'm like, this wasn't like what you listened to if you were a rap fan, and so there's this part of me that now I'm like hearing the present era where it's obviously, this sounds like something that if there was a mockery in the 90s, if someone were to make a sci-fi movie that were to mock the future and to
based on the worst of the present.
Yes, that's what music right now sounds like. And now and then there's one label or here or there I'll pick up on something like there's one called not Royal Big Crown. Big Crown, somebody there figured it out. They said, hey, a shoegaze band can have a bassist and a drummer. And, and they're, what? what? Oh my God, no, but the people will want to have sex with women, and oh my God, no, you don't understand.
Right.
And they have to drink, soy milk and abstinence, and and so I'm like, every once in a while I'll hear something that I'm like, this is sexy rock and roll. This is what it's supposed to sound like. But you could, okay, a lot of young women, they can't hear that music. If they hear music that's legitimate, like some Sam Cooke, they will actually feel genuine emotions that are very deep, and they can't handle it. And they have to turn on Tay-Tay to Taylor Swift. They have to turn her on immediately. They're like, I am a lion, I am a winner, I am so fucking pretty, and it's just, and I'm sitting there like, oh my God, this is, you do understand this is Maoism to like a beat.
Yeah, and it's much like when you see them in their recent things when they were sent over to up on Capitol Hill to do their shit where they're protesting, and it's just the repetition, and now we will go, and now we will go down the halls to the right, down the halls to the right, and if we decide that we want to say something to our representatives or senators, and if we, it's just like, what the fuck? What the fuck?
And what's funny now is because I've been reading the Philokalia, it's one of those rougher periods on my psyche in a way because of fighting the online fight, the world of some of the most vapid and shallow, on sniping people and you fat bitch, and stuff, and then reading like these the reason why such a demon makes you insult women who are heavy is for this reason. And I'm like, oh God, you're right in my mind. Oh, you know everything.
The powers and principalities.
Yeah, and so what happened is one of the things that the Philokalia got into is self-esteem. And they got it, and it said people at the gateways, the gates to all the gates to hell are pride in one's self-esteem and wanting fame amongst men. And I was sitting there like, ow, I feel that in my freaking kidneys. Oh, I gotta put this down.
You will totally dig it if you check out the Psychomachia of Prudentius. Prudentius, he's a Christian thinker from late antiquity, before 1000, I believe. And he did this book called the Psychomachia, The War for the Soul. Tim told me about it years ago, and I think I've discussed it with him in at least one episode. He's the one who turned me on to it. But they're representations of all the virtues and vices in their actual, depicted. In the case of Prudentius, right through the text. But what happens is that in the manuscript tradition over time in Europe, excuse me, that whiskey's jumping in, they ended up having different representations, right? Because you've got miniatures and marginalia, the illuminations that surround the text. So you have avarice sneaking into the camp of virtues disguised as thrift. You have Luxuria, who arrives carried on a pallet with all these incense and smoke coming off of them, and luxury and indulgence in pleasure. And it's supposed to overcome the virtues. And you have Humilitas, who is the leader of all of the virtues. Humility, of course, right? In the Christian context. But then you have Superbia, which is, of course, pride, which is the fundamental vice from which all the others devolve. That's what a lot of people miss, is that in this early Christian thinking, when you understand the art of memory and how they will lay out all kinds of ranks of these different epitomized figures, that you have to look to the iconography, to the architecture, to the sculpture, and you'll see that it's a book. And that's why when you come in through a certain doorway of the church during a certain time of year that's used for this festival, that's the doorway that has the patriarchs rising up, in the arch over the doorway. Or another one will have virtues and vices. You'll have gargoyles that are devouring the religious scribe. So you'll see his tonsure, right? And he's holding his pen and stuff, but the gargoyle is devouring him because he's fallen for the sin of pride. The lessons are all there around you. But I think I just jumped a little too far from...
Hey, how about there's another thing that I think we could both agree that we hate, that in the instruction of art at its fundamentals, all of this has been skipped over.
Oh yeah, now it's like tangerine, amoeba, apartheid 3, tampon in a teacup. My graduation project, that's human feces in a plastic bag with like a strobe light behind it.
And that this is something that at the age of, I would argue, at the age of 13 or 14, I think both of us had this experience somewhere around that age, like through comic books, cinema. I believe, if I remember your story, that you, at around that age, you were actually in the reading of things that were occult, where a lot of these symbols had been, people later, 100, 200, 300 years later, they see these symbols in cathedrals and they sort of interpret them correctly, or they interpret them according to what becomes their system, or maybe a system that they're like, oh, I always wondered what that symbol was for. And they find, a pamphlet in medieval Europe that has this ancient wisdom about this symbol, and that it's like, okay, well, now that we could compare all this information, children, you've learned how to do like drawings, you've learned color, you've learned all this stuff. Now you should, this is how history and art are bound together, and that people looked back from the Christian era into the pagan era, and these were images that sometimes were unique to a region or spanned all of the Hellenic region.
Right. Can you read the iconography? What can you read about the psyche of man? What can you read about the great conversation of various cultures? What can you read about, for example, how any number of aspects of the pagan pre-Christian Roman priesthood survived in Roman Catholicism, with the vestments of the priesthood, the symbolism surrounding the pontiff, right? The altar itself, right? Roman Catholicism, whether or not slippers had to do with retaining the red slippers of the Flamen Martialis, from the pagan system into that shit is fucking insane. Okay, now back to what pisses me off.
Yes.
Because there should be an angry fucking part of this to keep it moving, right? We cannot allow the natural joy that comes from an inquisitive mindset to derail us from the process of fucking raging and bitching.
Exactly.
So the millennial way of talking that tries to put a question on the end of every fucking sentence.
Are you talking about talking like this?
Yes! It's fucking insane. You can do it better than I can, man. I tried. I'm like, okay, is it that weird lilt like we get in the South where they try to make it into a question at the end? So before we were talking, I was trying to see if I could do it. I'd really like to go and get an ice cream, but I'm not sure if... See, I'm saying not sure. They have to say... They'll make declarative statements. Yes. And they turn them to a question at the end. And I can't fucking imitate it right, but every motherfucker watching this knows what I'm talking about. Essentially what it is that they're so gutless and cowardly in the face of their hive collectivization that any statement has to be put forth in such a tentative way for fear of triggering or causing offense that there is no simple statement, full stop. There's always I'm going to say it, my name is Oliver, You have
to really try, to do it. You have to.
I can't. And that's why they all think I'm strange. It's just like, and I think they're fucking just as fucked up as fiddlers, bitches. I mean, it's essentially cowardly. It's the fear of, I'll make a declarative statement in confidence, even knowing that like some motherfucker might come along, much better versed in this subject matter, and set me straight. It's the story of my life. I'm happy when it happens. Not too happy, but yeah, happy when it happens. But they roll through. It's like, let's go see a movie. I can't even do it. Yeah, so that's mine.
Let me try. Hey, would you like to see a movie?
Yes.
Because then we could go to the mall and see that movie with Adam Sandler in it. And because Adam Sandler is so funny. Oh my God. He did that one movie where he was like a Cuban, and I know, yeah, totally.
It's fucking insane. And then the policeman told me,
I actually can't put it together. I have to try so hard. I can't even think through, like, what would they say? What would they say? Because I'm trying to do that weird, yeah.
Yeah, you haven't been suckled on the poisonous tit of outrage for long enough, combined with a sense of fear. Anyway, so that's just another one. I have many more, but now, sir, it is your turn. Anything with women, anything with society.
Oh, okay. One of the things now that I am finding is sort of a pisser is, I think other people will see this. Leave it in the comments, folks. Women who are you seeing women in the millennial period hunting for sperm donors? Because I have now seen this, because of the area I live in is small enough that I have now encountered something that I'm like, this is so weird, this period of this woman's life where she's kind of jumping from boyfriend to boyfriend, but her age is this way or that way, or her life is this way or that way, and then boom, like that, somebody who's known about 6 months, I kip, they're having a baby, and I'm just sitting back and I'm like, holy fucking shit, like these they're breeding. They're motherfucking breeding. They're just it's like no thought about it. This isn't somebody who it's like 3 years. They finally figured out and planning it out. It's like, oh no, this person has gotten out of college with this person this long. Oh, I kip. They're having a kid. And it's like, and I'm sitting back like thinking, wait a second. You are only in your field. You could have only been in your field for, I met you at this age. You were still in school. And so I'm like, oh my fucking God. Like it's the cycle just continues. It just, God damn it. Yeah. So the MGTOWs, they are probably dancing around every time they see this. They probably are sitting there watching life go by going, shit. I knew it,
Right. But I think that there's a certain amount of it that is like I've dodged enough of it myself, but I don't know, man. Some part of me, I have to wonder. It's better. Yeah. It's straight out of the Matrix. The fucking bullets go flying by. That was a 50 caliber that almost caught me, and her name was. Yeah, it's kind of like fucking, women with daddy problems. I was talking to a friend about that, and I was like, man, I thought it was the perfect thing for me. I was dating this chick who was 13 years younger. I was fucking gobsmacked in love, absolutely destroyed. I'm like, but the leash connects here, honey. If you want to clip it, I'm trying to tell you where to attach it, right? You are the best thing since fucking sliced bread. And the sad reality is that I can't remember what I'm talking about. It's your turn.
Oh, well, the whole, then, actually, there's another one. Obviously, this is about your dad.
Yes, that was it. Yes. So hang on, let me get this thought out or I'm destroyed. Thank you. You just saved me from a fucking period of hellish shame. So you think that it's the most wonderful thing in the world that's going to happen, that they kind of have daddy problems, that you're younger. And I myself can speak for that. As I said, I'm like, attach the leash here. This is fucking wonderful. You know what? I don't understand why I hear so many people like laugh about older men who get with younger women over daddy problems. I'm like, it's the fucking best thing ever. Where is her dad? Because I'm going to grab him by his fucking face and I'm going to kiss him on both cheeks because I love her fucking daddy problems. And I'm somehow a parallel for her dad where she's going to work it out. And then it fucking dawned on me, dude, what happens when they hate their dad? That's when I fucking discovered that I was just this stand-in proxy, man. Like I finally, I woke up one day and it's almost like her dad fucking winked at me. He was like, I'm glad you're there. Because you just saved me. You allowed me to karmically sidestep what I owed her for how I raised her. And you were just a rube. What do you call it? A fucking something ass buster? A sucker?
Ass buster.
Right. It's whatever you call it. I was one of those. I was like, raise your hand. It's like, I'm a sucker.
Yeah. Oh, boy. And that actually, I got to admit, now this has come up enough in like, where really like, one part of a conversation, then another piece, and I'll snip these together, and I'm like, so where the fuck did she even meet her dad? You know, like, because the more I'm piecing together this woman's life, she liked socialism. She simply doesn't believe in any criticism of socialism. She's got this whole stack of problems. Fascinating. It's sort of like, there's like math to this. Let me think about this. And so more and more I'm finding out, like, no, there is something about the way the human mind develops and the necessity of a man in the child's life that to me, I'm like, no, this is the most proven out proof of child development. And we now have a whole generation that this is more than obvious. You could just see it. A generation that can't think orderly, that just can't conceive of discipline. So that Jordan Peterson is now their dad. And so I've started to think about, like, that I'll have these conversations. I'm like, does this never come up among women that they all are saying something really negative about how all the men do that thing with their manliness and their manhood and their being men all the time with that, their penises and
man spreading in their cargo shorts.
Yeah, yes, there we go. And then at some point they put together, they're like, oh, all of us hate our dads.
No, it is a single. I heard somebody say it. Maybe it was Stefan Molyneux or something, and he's often a little too Protestant for me, even though he's post-Protestant. But still, he does a lot of good work, and he has a lot of good, straight insights. And one of them is, I think it was him, is just, it's a single mother generation, man. I'm like, that's what you get. Like, cut it loose and say that there is no need for the men there. I mean, I get to hear it all the time online, and and seeing people talk about how the black community has been destroyed by the single motherhood, and I'm like, I'm in the fucking white community, and I came straight out of that shit, and you know what, it fucked me up too, man. It's just it's a mess when those patterns and standards aren't there. But once again, I feel like there needs to be more hate. So I'm going to conjure a bit more. Do you have something?
Oh, yeah. I hate that with every advantage now on YouTube.
I hate
of the online right, with every advantage, with them bowling over. Like the St. Jude's thing with the kill stream totally was like the cherry on top of the Sunday of, you motherfuckers own YouTube. You actually absolutely, positively are what people want to see. All sorts of people are hate watching. Like everyone, Kumite, Andy Warski, these people are writing journalists. They're like, they can't type fast enough. They want Ghost in the Shell cyber hands so they could type more articles about Sargon of Akkad. And what Richard Spencer has a new sweater. The bastard! He got it from all that Patreon money. Oh, we gotta get him. And at some point, then everybody has to fuck with each other.
Right, and that's where we are, man.
And it's so lame. And like that, you're sitting there going, wait. So you just made this up about this person, and it's taken a year and a half, and tons of drama.
You know what they are? They're envious little typist bitches. That's where you deserve great credit for your hashtag typists. Because they are a bunch of fucking envious typist bitches.
And I want to make sure I should give credit where credit's due. That was Roosh Velazadeh. Roosh Velazadeh came up with typists, and I borrowed that. And just like I always credit Matt Forney with repopularizing degenerates. He really gets upset that he is.
That word's getting around, man. That shit fucking took off. Talk about like when it's time to railroad, it's time to railroad. Like that's a new expression. Can you imagine if we'd heard degenerate growing up? Like there's no such thing, right? But I'm like, degenerate's making a solid comeback.
Totally. There's so many things that I think of, like television shows from the 70s that I'm like, that were on reruns, that I'm sitting there and I'm as a little kid like, oh, that's fucking funny. Dad, what does that mean? And if he had said, son, it's rather degenerate.
Back in the 70s, naked men with fucking massive amounts of body hair.
because the women totally were buying Playgirl.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, actually, that's a fucking good call. What was that magazine for? Who bought Playgirl? Actually, I never bothered to think about that. But who really? Seriously, who?
It wasn't until the internet that I ever actually, I knew he had been in Playgirl because of something. It was like a headline, when I was a child or something. And I'm like, oh, Burt Reynolds, he has a mustache. He makes movies about cars or something, That's all I knew. And Dom DeLuise. And that was it. I had those associations, and outside of that, that was it. And then that was the thing is I saw on the internet, Burt Reynolds, what the fuck is this? Oh, he was in Playgirl, and then I'm like sitting there looking at it, and it's all YMCA, and I'm like, right.
I actually saw them play once.
Oh, really?
Yeah. At a club I worked at. They threw a great party, man. It was gay as shit. But yeah.
They fucking put on a show from what it looked like.
Oh, it was a fucking show. I mean, I remember it was like 20 or something. I was working security at a nightclub, and they ended up, they had The Damned play. They had, I remember Boots Collins being there, played with D-Light. Fudge Nirvana played there on that first big tour where they broke out. Yeah, a lot of people.
Nice.
Butthole Surfers. I saw a bunch of people play there, but yeah, the Village People were among them. Okay, so here's another one I fucking hate. I fucking hate. Like, you're supposed to check yourself out at certain lines in the grocery. I'm like, can we create some fucking jobs up in here? Like, I'm gonna stand there with my little basket full of stuff being berated, being fucking chiseled away at by some automatic program that's scanning my shit and weighing what I do. I have never in my life experienced so much fucking affront. It's such an assault on my dignity. And there's like some dude standing in the background with a pair of like Carhartt trousers and his like little fucking grocery store vest on and some comfortable Walmart shoes, like watching me with his eagle eye, just in case I try to palm that lettuce. Like, fuck you, man. This whole idea that I'm supposed to check myself out and then you cocksuckers are going to present it to me as though it's for my convenience. I was born at night, but not last night, motherfuckers. Don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining. Check my shit out. I'm like an old man. I'm going to put on my like, whatever those fucking fishing or photographer's vests with my, many extra pockets. And I'm going to be all bitchy because I'm getting to that age now where I'm like, no, fuck you. I used to be young and I'm all like, I'm not going to say anything. Now I'm old enough that I'm just like, no, fuck you. Fuck you. So I put on my little outfit with my extra stuff. I've got my, my chapstick, and I've got, a pen and I've got a good pocket knife, and, and I go to the grocery store and I do it during the day because I'm going to go to a fucking line where someone will check me out. Like, can you imagine when you're sitting there actually being forced to flip through your lists of vegetables in order to like find it and enter the code because you're trying to buy vegetables when you leave? That shit is unheard of. It is unchristian. And my friend, it's unfucking American. I'm serious, man. I hate that shit.
I go to the same grocery store all the time, and because it's like some really small operation, they always have people there. There's very few.
Right, yeah, you probably aren't eating the crap I am going to a big box grocery store. But where I live, as long as you're not getting your produce there for the most part, you're okay. You have to go to a second place for it. Yeah, and you're in the place where everybody shows up with their little folded, ready to fill bags because then no one's going to carry plastic out of there. Lots of people smell like patchouli.
Yeah, well, that also because there's the grocery store I go to is solidly in like it's supposedly the poor white trash neighborhood, and so it's just people who just tend to be like more of the solidly working for
it's not patchouli. It's more like we don't want to fuck with all that bullshit.
Yeah, but the beautiful part is because it's a small operation, they instantaneously respond to any brand they could afford to shelve. So it's like they've improved the store tremendously because they're not a big chain of stores. And it's like really funny in a way. Like I sit back and I'm like, this is the argument for diversity of grocery stores and businesses is because if you're not tied to a chain, you can adapt when other stores can't.
Right.
Because they can't.
It's just faster. It's more nimble.
Yeah, they can't afford to shelve things at that size uniformly, or however, or they got to get from the top down. Yes, you can, if the people want it. Yes, put it on the shelf.
Right, stroking that fucking long-haired white Persian cat with your face off camera. Yeah. All right, now I'm going to leave you to think about, because I know you've got one. It's just got to come to your mind. I'm going to tell you mine, but I'm going to ask you to think about one working in the service industries dealing with the public. There have got to be some from people who show up on the other side of your counter or in your shop. But while you're thinking about that, I am going to share women with too much fucking makeup. Have you ever hugged a chick and you came away with a flesh-shaped, flesh-colored, like weird smear on your shoulder from or when you go to like fucking hug someone and all you can smell is that makeup smell? Or if you end up in the bathroom of a woman who has that kind of makeup and there's like a weird dusty residue on everything from their weird powders and cosmetics and shit. I remember once like reading a magazine article about how much fucking lipstick women swallow in their life. And I'm like thinking, there was this like fist-sized ball of fucking French Rouge that she had to pass, right? It was a real struggle. It was a real struggle, Dr. Murray, but I finally dropped out this fucking really beautiful sphere of Lancome Crimson. It's like, what the fuck is up with all that makeup? Like, there's got to be, I don't care how many, rabbits that you like dump the powder into the eyes of to make sure it's safe. Like, you gotta fuck yourself up eventually from having that much shit on your skin, right? Don't you?
And that's the thing is, I would think that by this time, especially in this era of time where everyone wants to be all natural and all this stuff, that it would be something that would clean the skin and then in some way bring it to its best point of natural presentation.
Right, man. With me talking about Burt Reynolds appearing in Playboy and you with your cosmetic recommendations, we just need to start a fashion and makeup line, brother.
Exactly. Yes. So, here's one I could actually point to that would totally make people go, really? You really paid attention to that one? You're totally straight, bro. Is remember in the early 90s witch shoes?
No, you talking
that short-lived fashion that women were into.
Witch
really
shoes?
Pointy. They were like witch boots that were ankle high.
Oh, so like a 19th century women's like lace-up ankle boot?
Well, but there was no lace. It was literally only ankle high, and that it was super pointy, and then it had a short heel. So these were and every woman in San Francisco had to have these, and they look like elf shoes. If elves,
I do remember the pointy toes. I remember
that's
that.
what they would look like. Yeah, and they were, oh my god, like I hated those. And every time they reappear, oh my god, they hit like a fucking wave, and you're just like, no, do not wear those. No, they don't look. God damn it!
If women knew the real opinions that men have about most of their shoes, there would be a fucking wave of suicides, that would sweep the nation. Like I have seen so many gorgeous ass women. It's kind of like a butterfly tattoo on a perfectly good tit. Like the fucking shoes that women believe sometimes that like men are gonna like or whatever. Or let's not assume that those women are foolishly wearing those clothes because they care what men will think about them. The shoes that they like for themselves. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, man.
Oh, totally. And oh man, one is sort of the thing that actually I could definitely say goes with the too much makeup is, okay, it's by your fourth decade, it's like wear utilitarian sandals, ladies. Do not wear silver or gold or sparkling sandals as if glam up those motherfucking dogs. You are 40 plus. They are now simply what you are walking on. They are no longer something that guys are like, whoa, look at those.
I don't know, but see, now that depends on the type of man. I am convinced, man, like I've had friends who had like hardcore foot fetishes, but they had really shitty feet. Like, I think there's something biological, some genetic thing. Like, people fixate on all kinds of things. When I was young and I used to go to strip clubs, I would be sitting there and I don't know, I grew up in a city that had a lot of strip clubs. As a young punk rock guy, as a part of the single mother generation, and all the libertine aspects of, fighting against social conservatism and coming up with the Gen X stuff. Like, I spent a lot of time in fucking strip clubs. So, I know how well pink lights will hide zits on a girl's ass. I just know too much about the industry, having, dated and known dancers. And they used to tell the joke about, what's a stripper do with her asshole before work? I might have told you this one before, drops him off at band practice. I was kind of like that dude, But I'd see these women and you could see they'd like lean over on stage and they'd get that weird kind of shit that looks almost like fluting on a Corinthian column on the side of that fucking fake tit that has had the implant, so it causes that weird scalloping on the sides when they lean forward. And like I'd be with these guys and they're all like, she's hot, and I'm like, pfft. Actually Tim told me about it once. He had this great fucking example. He's like, I look at most people and it's like Pollyanna Pure Pussy and Reginald Rigid Rod. They just show up in front of each other with their bright, shining teeth. And he proceeded to unpack this weird-ass fucking story from deep within his psyche where he talked about how these two seemingly socially presentable people would go home and first the dentures would come out and then the wig and toupees would come off and they'd pop out the glass eyes and they'd remove the props and the braces and like they'd remove the fake arm. And finally these two fucking horrific creatures would just kind of like flop and slither towards each other on the bed. The features that men think are attractive when they don't look at all more deeply, they just catch the shiny surface object. I guess that's another thing I hate. But I will say that if a woman has a great set of feet, foot fetish isn't my thing. Like I focus on a woman's waist or a woman's neck or good snouts on a chick, right? Good jawline or like, or skin, just generally skin. Like those are the things I know. The simple fact that there is a swollen mass in the chest area, like doesn't resonate for me as an indicator. But like if a woman has a good set of feet, I ain't going to blame her for showing them. The foot is a complex device.
Well, no, what I'm talking about is when there's just old ladies wearing like weird gold Birkenstocks.
Right. That's what I call, like in my in one of my poems I wrote, find a mother with plain strong hands. Like at a certain point, a woman's supposed to be mature enough that she can have her beauty rolling. But for an older woman to look too coquettish, it's almost as foolish as, an older dude seeming to be too concerned, who's got the one little bit of gel that makes the hair in front stick up, just so. It's like, no, there's a point at which you have to retreat. And coming from me, that's saying something because I'm I dress up and, I'm into all the flamboyant crap when I go out. But all right, so your turn. Did you come up with one from work? And
Oh yeah. Now one of the things that this happens a lot at not among the people who work there, but with like customers is. They'll come in and what they're wearing means that they must be in an office, which is a tight space. And this person has so much goddamn cologne on.
Oh, God.
It's like still stinging your eyes.
I'm leaving it to you, but you just nailed a lifetime one of mine. Perfection.
And what the weirdest things about this is that there's also the various groups of religious groups they'll come through, and this will be the case.
Like Muslims with rose water. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing: is there's certain groups that are a little more recent to the Northwest that are consistently doing this, and that you're really like, no. It was, once again, one of those people with too much cologne. And it was like, and after a while, I'm like, this has to kind of be a thing that must come up in various communities.
Yeah, I call it a fucking whore bath. It's a bunch of like skunk ass biological warfare, man. That shit hurts.
But I mean, like, but check it out. Everybody has done this at some stage. This has been a joke about every single group, to the point where we could even remember within living memory this being a joke about Eastern Europeans who moved
right,
to
or Italians once upon a time. Right.
And you would think that at some point it would be like, bro, you need to slow down on the axe, bro. What do you mean, bro? Bro, the Americans aren't really into that much axe. Like, it's a, what do you mean, bro? Well, you know how that girl didn't like you? Maybe you had too much axe on. But, bro, it's axe, you know? And so I'm like wondering, like, when that hits a community, or if it just doesn't, that it's like, oh, no. I mean, we even have a saying in the old country, you know, like a man who doesn't wear enough cologne is like a peasant.
Is a nobody. Yeah, and you know what's funny is I had a friend who stayed as a stayed in the U.S. as an exchange student. I became very good friends with him. Visited him later. First time I went to Europe when I was 14. He was Swiss and German, and his last name was Von. You know, so he was somebody. So he's Swiss and German, fucking handsome dude, blonde hair, blue eyes, comes over from Europe, and that motherfucker would just pour Drakkar Noir all over himself, dude. And it was the first phases of high school. And when you were talking about Axe, I was like, you know, what was the Axe? But when we were kids, it was fucking Drakkar.
I totally didn't have
horrifying. Well, I will add in a last piece. I think that makes bitches sick. Because, like, I paid a lot of attention to scent communication, chemical communication. And, you know, you've got the aspect of, you know, you have sebaceous glands on your body, and then you have what are called apocrine glands. So they're associated with somebody's personal scent or sex scent, all that shit. Mm-hmm. So the armpits themselves, for those who don't know, are known as being their own organs. They're called axillae, because there's such a concentration of apocrine glands in each armpit that they qualify as an organ of themselves on the body.
That explains it. Okay.
And then based on what kind of bacteria grow on your skin and with your skin oil and your chemistry, they combine to produce a given scent. So, you know, I'm sure I don't have to tell you, in my life, I've run across women who smelled like fucking gold. You know, you're just like, yes, please. Thank you, sir. May I have another? You know, and then there are other ones who like, you know, I don't give a fuck what you look like. I just smelled you. And, you know, some of it's where everybody would agree they smell bad, but there have been women around. I know they wouldn't bother other people, but like it hit me. You know, it was just like, that smells fucking wrong for me. Like there's a weird syrupiness to it, which suggests incipient diabetes or whatever. I probably just got too sensitive a nose. But, excuse me, I'm convinced that the people who slather themselves with these different kinds of, you know, scents, particularly these, you know, synthesized ones out of Swiss scent labs or wherever this kind of, you know, crap is produced. Mm-hmm. Chemical communication entails an actual particle, a molecule of the shit entering through the nose and causing a chemical reaction. And when you look at something, the most primitive form of life in existence, something like a sea squirt, right, where the biologists can't be sure whether or not they're talking about a plant or an animal, but the equipment is basically the same. Well, that's what's going on with our sense of taste and our sense of smell. Mm-hmm. And I am convinced, like dogs smelling each other's asses, or when you pair bond to a woman, you're just used to that smell. Like when I was living with a woman for like 6 years, and then we split up, and I was around another woman, and my body just had this massive reaction, like, nope, that's not the one I'm coded to right now. You know, there's a way in which the chemical communication is major, and when you talk about something going up through the nose and hitting the hypothalamus, which is right up here, just beyond the nose, right, where you got the pineal and pituitary and stuff nearby as well. Okay. But the chemical communication that comes in through scent hits the rest of the system, and then that fires off the endocrine system, which means you get the thyroid going, or you get the gonads or the ovaries, right? Your different glandular systems will do shit that will change you. So I guess what I'm coming back to is the idea that if they cover themselves with that kind of shit, I am convinced that a certain amount of my biology, like the way in which my glandular systems respond and adjust in order to meet changing needs and maintain my own health comes from my ability to smell myself. Now, I don't mean to go crazy with it, but I think those dudes are fucking just, barking up a tree for some kind of crazy ass cancer or all kinds of weird endocrine problems or, problems with insulin production, whatever it might be, based on the fact that they're not able to get a read of themselves from themselves because they're covered in this weird ass shit. And it's like you talked about, I think your eyes burning or whatever. I worked at a shop where I was dealing with the public. It was at Kinko's when I was in my, around 2021. And man, I remember one night some woman covered in perfume came in and she was like 30 feet away and I fucking sneezed. Like, it's crazy. And you can feel like at the back there where the sinuses and the back of the throat come together, like it lays a fucking burn on your ass and your eyes start watering.
And you're like, oh, okay, hold it back.
Whether it's a lady with a whore bath or my friend from Switzerland bathing in Drakkar Noir, don't do that. Okay, well, we should wrap this one soon, but I want to give you an opportunity to throw one in since I just ran that along. Do you have a last one? What you hate?
What I absolutely hate. This is actually absolutely totally. And to wrap it up, I hate the way that this fucking message came out. Politico did a thing about the Democratic Party. Are they the wet rag party? So then they go into it. Oh, no. You see, it's not that the Democrats in any way, shape, or form can be criticized for any of their views. They have done everything right. They are just too good. Their fucking halo is shining too brightly. And instead, they need to become an avenging angel. And I'm just sitting there like, you fucking maniacs. I'm just like... and over and over again, this thing of you have had to purge every platform that you could be criticized on. You have been widely criticized for possibly rigging the actual realm of human communication across the entire Eurosphere with the help of nonprofit corporations. If you were being accused of such things, wouldn't it be that you would want to actually double down on one-on-one debates as often as possible over all the most controversial subjects so that you could absolutely clear the air about how goddamn amazing and fucking miraculous your points of view are? But we Democrats have been too principled, is their argument, and they've got to start doing it the way that the conservatives do it. And I'm like, what the fuck are you all talking about?
Lying and projection. The projection is getting crazy. I sent a tweet about this recently, man. It's like the old German doppelganger, right? The idea of the double. And when you see that perfect double of yours, it's this ominous sign and all these crazy traditions that when you see the perfect reflection of yourself, it's like come to steal your identity. It's like almost like the pod person that's going to replace you. But like as I see the rhetoric coming out, and you know what? Good on us for only hitting politics very last. We did a good job of bitching about something besides politics. It's like that was a growth moment. That was a teaching moment. I think that was a learning moment, Donovan. But yeah, the projection is so out of control. Yeah. And they're not, what we need to do is, take the next step. It's not just projection. It's also just crass ass lying and hypocrisy like you're talking about, what we really need is to step away from our fucking pristine behavior, our above reproach, can do no wrong, moral high ground.
Somewhere a Republican is eating breakfast and no one's yelling at them, or something. Somewhere there's a church full of them. You know what to do, what? I'm like, where are you planning to where are your fantasies taking this? What
are we gonna have to do here? I'm ready to go with you, honey, but we need to lay out what this path is gonna be, because are you sure that this is where you want to go?
Totally. And then it's that part of me where I'm like, they must in some part of their mind, Stonewall is happening every weekend somewhere. It's just being covered up by the white man.
Right.
That's somewhere there's a gay club that the cops just are showing up to and being like, okay, all you meth heads, get out here. You fucking, we're charging all of you with buggery. And then they take out their sticks, you know.
Right. We're going to put you in Reading jail like Oscar Wilde, you dirty homosexuals. You know, how dare you dispute what Lord such and such said? And as soon as we're done, let's go and seize all these women who've had abortions and, you know, let's turn them into breeders. I think we should set up a basement full of breeders, you know, because, you know, that's what we do, isn't it? As one does.
It's some fantasy world that I'm like, that's the one that can, and then there's that. Actually, yeah, let's go there. Is to tie in some of these other subjects is the world of the sci-fi fantasy of the effeminate mind always is high walls and all the women are trapped in sexual slavery. It is.
I saw that Star Trek. Hell yes.
I swear to God, that's, for some reason, this is this combination of, oh, well, in the dark future, the oppressed will be kept in cages and they'll just be bred. And I'm like, okay, so
that's why you want to bring so many Muslims in. I'm like, you know, what the fuck? It's like, we don't have the word harem, do we?
And that's why I then think of, I'm like, oh, so you mean like the Tleelaxu of Dune? So they're the famously super Muslim culture where you never see their females because they just turn them into a breeding pod, and they're like this weird sci-fi nightmare Muslim people, and I'm like, oh, you mean like in Dune, that one character group, the does, they don't know what I'm talking about. Why would they read Dune? That was written by a white man, you know. It's like, God damn it. They're like, just these people dressed up in the fucking outfits from that one sci-fi book about breeding women out, and then I'm like, wait, you know, in Dune, one of the most famous sci-fi series ever, the whole backbone of the story is a order of females who are superhumans who are trying to keep humans breeding along certain lines to create the Ubermensch.
Those Bene Gesserit witches.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that a Duke song might be an animal?
Oh, God. Oh, that was, what's in the box? Pain. Do not move. Oh, that was. Oh.
And you know, actually, this way we could wrap up with just a piece of totally useless trivia. But it turns out that Frank Herbert had not only studied Islamic cultures, as obviously he had, but he studied specifically Circassians and the Caucasus, because he has a language that the Fremen speak called Chakobsa, and you know where that comes from? Most people do not.
I only had heard a rumor it actually was a real existent language.
Yes, except how do you define real or unreal? Because what it is the secret hunting language used by the male Circassian hunters. So you would only be taught it after initiation. The women have their own, as I recall, some sort of weird whistling language, some of the groups in the Caucasus. But the men would be taught this, and as best I can tell, there's not a lot of information on it, just some of the academics in the Caucasus who are also usually very much nationalists who are in the midst of some fight against, you know, Russian cultural, you know, cultural obliteration they face at the hands of the Russians incorporating them. So it's hard to trust all of their academic work, but the way I have seen it discussed is that it has a typical feature of hunting languages that has to do with misdirection. So the ritual magical thing about it is that you would never use the normal word for the red deer that you're hunting. You would use some other term that would stand in place of, so that even when you spoke to each other among hunters about what you were about to shoot with an arrow, the name of that thing would never be used because it would alert it, or it would alert the mistress of the beasts. So it's almost like a Cockney rhyming slang, but it's in a sense. but it's taught to the hunters. So you have certain words that that refer to things, but only the hunters know it, and they can only by tradition tell it to another initiate in the hunting tradition, because the idea is that if you name the beast that you're hunting, it's almost as though you've warned it before it happens. Whereas everything is about, how when you're like, I don't know if you ever stalked somebody and you found that when you were sneaking up on someone, if you looked at them, they knew you were coming. Whereas if you just intentionally did not look at the person you were sneaking up on, it's kind of tied to the same thing when you're in a crowd and you suddenly turn your head and you realize you lock eyes with a person who is already looking at you.
Oh, well, I mean, I would put it as there was actually somebody who did a video on the ancient languages of Europe, and they said that there's all these weird words for bear if you actually look up the origin of the word bear. Exactly. And they were like, that they said that what it is that you can't call it bear. Exactly. Otherwise, the bear will show up. So you call it by another name, and that's why there's all these odd names for the star system of Ursa Major, right? Ursa Major,
the big bear, yeah.
And that it was because you were supposed to not say the actual name. And I thought one of the names was actually the term. I thought that's why the word Arctos is that it refers to brother, but the concept is that it's in a relationship to bear cubs or something like that. I thought
my Latin's not good enough to guess.
Yeah. I would have to. Maybe somebody can leave it in the comments. But yeah, it's like there's Arctos Publishing, and it refers to a term for Ursa Major, but it actually has something to do with being a brother of the brood from bears. Because and that was an important symbol and of human life, or life as like it's the epitome of life in some kind of concept, and it's
a fundamental human thing. It fits in with like the idea of, if you know the name of the demon, you have power over it, or the prohibitions against, pronouncing the name of Yahweh,
Yes. Even that scene where he said, "Tell me your name," and he goes, "I am who am," and it just
my name is Legion, sure.
Well, I am what I am, who I am.
I am that I am. Yes.
It's just
Tut Sut.
And that he got him. That he was like, okay, I can't use your name to control you. Okay, I'll just be cool now.
And we have got to cut it here, because my immediate thing would be to jump into the oblique designation that the political correctness employs, and the way in which you don't call it what it really is. Like, censorship is, no, it's actual protection against hate speech. Like, there's something about that oblique approach. We'd have to compare social justice terminology to secret hunting languages.
Yeah, that, and so part 2 will be euphemism.
Euphemism could be good. Ooh, we'd have to collect our favorite euphemisms, like our favorite ones. And you know what? Actually, people in the comments section, Donovan has done a good job of asking people to contribute. Go ahead and list your favorite euphemisms, because we need to discuss this,
Youths were fighting.
Yes, okay. Asians, there's another good euphemism.
Were fighting on the bus in London, and all right, there we go.
Fucking good. Nicely done, brother. Nicely done. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I thank, of course, Mr. Donovan Warland as well. As you know, he gave you the contact information for, at Don Arete, and he's got Turco Polier, and there's Donovan Warland on YouTube. Please check out his content. I thank you all for joining us, as always. Until next time, I'm Oliver Perrin for both Semiogogue and A Safer Space, and I am out.